It is the Journos podcast powered by SABC Sport. And as I said, that we're looking a little dapper today because we do have a guest, one of my most favorite human beings in the whole wide world. And we're going to take you on a bit of a journey, not as back as 2010, but, you know, somewhere along the theme of hosting World Cups in the country, because we are the premium destination when it comes to hosting events. I think we've proven that, whether it be hockey, football, netball. Listen, South Africa has got it. So every world governing body that's looking for hosts, Mzansi is the place to be. As I said earlier, my name is Lonabo Gotla, Daniel as well as Garabo, and of course Nusi Gazi joining us, former NSA media liaison officer, but of course also a guru when it comes to brands and communications. Nusi, here we are back with you. You said we dug you out because you were still relaxing after leaving your post at Netball South Africa. How have you been since?
Good evening, Lonabo, and Daniel and Garabo as well. I think you dug me out of a hole, right? I think I've been comfortably hiding there where no one could find me. As to how you found me is a miracle, but yes. I think it's been a good time. I think taking the time off just to declutter and just get back in my thoughts has really helped. But I think I've been busy as well. It's not like I've just been hiding. I've been busy with other things.
You've just been hiding from me specifically.
Well,
but I want to take you on a slight journey, Nusi,
and
Daniel and Garabo. Just a few months ago here in South Africa, this is when the official ball was revealed, as well as the countdown officially started. Nusi, when you watch this, apart from the madness that was happening, I'm sure, behind the scenes, what comes to mind for you?
The 2023 Netball World Cup was a big milestone, for many reasons. And I think for the sport, that is semi-professional, that was a big thing, to be coming here and hosting a World Cup on home soil. I think it was the biggest thing, the first time in 60 years that this is happening on African continent.
Yes.
And I think what comes to mind for me is a case of, understanding that, we saw with the 2010 World Cup, so 2013 Cricket World Cup. But I think for me it was about, how we then see women's sport in general, evolving and growing, to what it is currently. And I think that for me was the biggest milestone for anybody who's involved in netball, whether you're part of the World Cup or just being part of netball in general.
For those that maybe do not understand, because I'm sure the person sitting at home, all they know is what's happening on the pitch. They never really get to see the moving points behind the scenes. Your role as a media officer, what was your role and what did you have to do?
Sure, how much time do we have?
Because it was a long list.
But I think, I've always maintained that, as a media officer for netball, or media officer in general, I think you then become that link between, the media and the general public, as well as, the sport itself. So you're almost like the guy in between, or the girl in between. You're almost like the bridge, that must make sure that, there's the stuff that's happening internally gets communicated externally, and put your finger on the pulse in terms of what's happening externally, so that you are then able to come back and craft a message and really help people, to really understand what the public is expecting from them.
Okay.
Looking at just the reception of, or should I say the public perception of what women's sports is generally here in South Africa. In the past, maybe a decade or so, what could you say, being in the position that you were in, as the bridge between public perception of what they think about the associations pertaining to whatever sports they find interest in, and what actually is happening from the association standpoint? What decisions are being made? What have you seen in terms of South African sports in general, and how women are now in the forefront?
Personally, I think we then need to look at sport as sport, right? So whether it's played by male or female, sport should be looked at as sport. The distinction comes when we start saying it's a women's sport, because then it means we're putting on a different cap in terms of decision making. Whereas if we treated all sporting codes as sporting codes, regardless of who plays them, then I think maybe decisions would be made better, because then it will not be based on gender, but it will be based on, does this sport need the funding that it needs? Does the sport need the attention that it needs? But I think, looking at the evolution of women's sport in general over the past 10 years, I think women have done very well for themselves, in terms of growing the sport. I think without the assistance of males, I think women have really pushed and covered a lot of ground, to make sure that they put their agendas up front, because it's easier for me to speak as a guy about women's sport, because I'm privileged enough to do that. But if a woman speaks about women's sport, they're speaking from a place of lived experiences, right? So I think for me, me, I've seen how women have generally covered a lot of ground in terms of moving their own sport forward. And I think men, as people that are sitting there making the decisions about women's sport, which is very weird.
True.
But I think some men have really come to the party in terms of really advancing this conversation, in terms of saying, now that you've seen what you've been able to do, this is how we can then, assist and help you somehow in moving the needle higher than what it currently is. And I think, and just to touch on what you are saying, so for me, I've always been very clear about, I knew that my time at netball would come to an end. And for me, there was a timeline. I said, the day I started marks the day I'm going to end. Yeah. And I've always been very clear about the day I leave, I want the woman to take over from me. Purely because I've got no business being there as a man leading a women's sport. That has always been
and
my
that
stance.
is exactly what happened, because now we have Karabo Mukhaladi as the media liaison at Netball South Africa.
Yeah.
And Nusi, how did you then find it difficult to balance, what you want to instill within an organization as a media officer and what the organization wants? Were there any clashes when it comes to that particular aspect?
It was a balancing act. I think there'll always be clashes. I think the day people agree on everything, then there's a problem, right? Because it means somebody's not living their truth.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that there had always been issues, there had always been clashes, but I was very clear about understanding what the mandate was. So what is the vision that you have as an organization? So let's clearly define what the vision is, right? Once we are all clear about what the vision looks like, we can then debate the mechanics of how to bring this vision to fruition, right? So I've always been very clear about what I wanted to achieve for myself, what I wanted to achieve for the organization. But it was always about the sport more than it was about a music crusade, right? So for me, it was about understanding what the vision was for the sport, what the organization wanted to achieve, and based on that, I was then able to come back and say, now that I know what needs to be done, let's debate how we're going to do it, right? So it would always be an issue about understanding what the media wants, because ultimately those are the people that you need to be servicing, right? So what stories do media want to get out there? What stories are media looking for versus what do we have at our disposal, and how then do we bridge the two and make sure that you still feed the people that you need in your corner, but ultimately also looking for other innovative ways, of making sure that you then even when people don't ask you for stuff is already available for them whenever they need it. Because I think that's the thing. So you can't be at a place where you are just asking to be asked. But it's about how then do you overfeed people so that ultimately no one can start saying, but we were looking for this thing, it was not available. But also because you are sitting there and you're wearing almost a different hat, you are then able to see other things that other people don't have access to, right? And then you're then able to say, maybe this might be a good angle to look at. And I think every journalist will tell you how I've been bothering them with story ideas.
Yeah.
And to say, you've never looked at this thing, how about? You've never done this thing, how about? And I've even had to convince the federation to say, maybe we need to break away from what has always been known as the way of doing things and find other creative ways and other innovative ways of doing things. So and I think, when you consider what we've been able to do over the past 5 years with netball players have become much more accessible now, right? Because we've been able to say, let's break away from waiting to be called, but then let's go and say, this is who I am, this is what I can do. So now you've got a lot of netball stories being told, and purely because we went out there and proactively started selling the stories. You've got a lot of, so now we are competing, when I left netball was competing for back page stories with football, rugby and cricket.
Yeah, and we got to a point where, Nusi, because I also do radio, where netball became the top story, and I was fortunate to be one of the people that were taken by SABC Sport to go cover the netball courtside.
Yeah.
I mean, if for me personally, it was a game changer. I can only imagine for the kids that came to watch the netball. I had daddies on radio call and say, Lonwabo, I couldn't care less for netball. I don't understand it. I just drop off my daughter, but I was so invested when I was listening on radio, and even though sometimes I couldn't get to watch, I couldn't take my daughter to Cape Town, but SABC bringing the tournament to us and making us feel like we're also in Cape Town really did make an impact. But Nusi, when a tournament is coming to the country, there are a lot of moving parts, and us as the layman, we're expecting that it's going to come and change our lives. We're expecting that after the netball, yes, the roads will be fixed, and we're going to have more courts everywhere in the country. And we did see, a sports center being opened in Malelani. SABC Sport Sport was there covering it. We've seen the president at the final. I remember him saying that an arena is going to be coming through. I mean, here's that footage again, black girls celebrating with Kanya and enjoying the festivities that were happening in Malelane. But I want to speak, Nusi, you touched on it a bit, about the legacy that was left by the Netball World Cup. Are you satisfied that the work and the sweat and the tears that were put in, some of the fruits we were able to bear from hosting the Netball World Cup?
Yes, right, and I'll tell you why. So I think, you know, and remember the announcement was made in March 2019 that 2023 the World Cup is coming to SA, right? And this just happened literally just a few weeks before I joined the federation. So I remember when I joined, I said to them, it's quickie bomb time. So meaning that we need to, you know, get on, because 4 years looks like it's a long time, but you blink twice, literally the 4 years is here. So in terms of, you know, the legacy projects that netball has been able to accumulate out of the World Cup. I think, you know, we've seen murals being built in especially in the Western Cape. We've seen netball courts, and I know now there's a rollout project where 60 courts that need to be built around the 52 districts in the country. So that the people are then able to, also young girls, you know, who have never had access to netball courts will then be able to have access to netball courts. But I think, you know, what you touched on about how, you know, the SABC was then, and many other media houses have been able to then bring netball back to the people. So I think for me it was a case of ensuring that even if I'm not able to go to a netball match, but I'm still able to get the netball stories. I was speaking to Dan off air about, you know, how, you know, as I always look at things from a consumer's point of view. So if I'm sitting at home and I did not get a chance to go to the match, and I want to and I want a match report, the question is, when do I want it 10 hours later, or do I want 10 minutes after the match has ended? And also, what kind of content do I want to put out? And that's why everyone that will tell you how I bombard them with content, because I feel like everybody needs to be fed with netball content.
Then we don't have an excuse, but we don't
didn't
know
cover
what's
the thing,
happening.
right?
No
So no one over the past 5 years can say to me, you never gave me access to information, right? But it was about understanding exactly what the end goal was. And what was the end goal for me had always been about making sure that, you know, everybody's got access to the sport. I might not be able to put you on court to go play, but I'll give you access to information about who played who, and what was the score, and who said what post and pre-match, right? So, and I think that was the thing that I was really, and today I'm still passionate about, to say, whatever happens, everybody needs to get access to information, because out of that, then we are then able to say, we've seen netball stories on TV, we've seen netball stories on papers, and we are reading about it, and we're actually hearing about them whilst traveling, because I think that is an important thing for me.
And you know, just also just touching on that, the fact that, you know, you gain the access to this information. The timing is important, because it also gives you that, you know, immediate attachment, the emotional side of it. While it's still fresh, you almost feel like I didn't miss it. In fact, I was there. And that's why it's very important for media teams within these organizations to make sure that this stuff does happen. And also touching on it a bit now, you know, we're not talking women's sports, we're talking women in sports. It's not just netball that has seen women flourishing now. We see it with Banyana Banyana. They've always been there. They've always been continental giants. But now we see them going across the world. Now it brings back that very old story about support. Not just from the public, but now from business, corporate. Where that part of the story? Where are we with that?
Now we need that brand specialist head, Lucy.
You guys give me too much credit. But anyway, let's give it a shot. I think, like I said when I started, that if the day we start looking at sport and not as women's sport or as male sport, I think decisions will be made very differently. Right? So, and I think we've seen, you know, the likes of Spa sponsoring the hockey and then sponsoring netball. We've seen Telkom, you know, throwing their weight behind netball. We've seen Seso throwing their weight behind Banyana Banyana. And I think it's purely because they believe in the product, or they believe in this brand that they're trying to sell. And also the inverse of that is that I think we need to get to a point where sports organizations and federations and sports people see themselves as a business, and not necessarily as I'm doing this thing as a hobby. But think about, I'm a business. So therefore, if I'm asking for investment, this is what I'm bringing to the table. And I think sport in general should stop going there and say we are begging people for sponsorships. We're not begging anybody for anything. It's a business transaction. It's a trade-off. So you put your name on my arm, and that's what you're getting in return. So I think if we then start looking at sport as a business, decisions will be then made differently. If we then start looking at ourselves as a business, it will then be easier to attract other people who are like-minded like us, you know, for them to be able to put their money where their mouth is. And I think we then need to also, secondly, get rid of this patriarchal thing where we are then, you know, deciding to give more men money than we give more women money, right? So, but I think it should be about let's invest in the sport because we believe in what these people can be able to achieve as a business.
No, see, I think we need a part 2 because you just dangled a carrot where I think we really need a masterclass, even for our athletes, just to say, now that you're a brand, for example, we spoke about Prudence Sekgodisho earlier, now that you're brand Prudence, how do we ensure that you leverage from the work that you've done as an athlete? How do we put you on Caster's level, but even higher, where sponsors are coming to you, but also how do we have many Prudences? But I'm going to thank you, Nusi, so much for coming, and good luck for the future. I know it is indeed a bright one, because as you said, that even though you left and we can't see you, you're still busy on the sidelines because your services are much needed. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. I always say every week that it is not the Journo's podcast if we do not have football. Diski coming up.